So we're looking at the 17th edition of our hydrotherapy theory and practice. And just as a reminder, as you navigate any health challenge, you just want to make sure that you partner with someone who has a similar philosophy of care that you do, and that the advice and ideas and concepts shared here this evening will just simply be additional tools for your toolbox, and that you shouldn't ever accept anything blindly without doing your own due diligence to make sure that it's going to work in your situation. Thomas Edison stated way back in 1903 that his idea was that the future of medicine was teaching people to be cognizant of their diet and the cause and prevention of disease. But even before that, in 1885, there was a statement that was very profound in the sense that there's a statement that the healing art, there's only one way that God approves, and it's God's remedies are the special agencies of nature, and that's pure air, water, cleanliness, a proper diet, purity of life, and a firm trust in God. And that they don't cost a lot, but that the alternatives that modern medicine uses today are costly, both in funds as well as taxing on the body. 3 John 1 verse 2 says, "Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health just as your soul prospers." And that's a two-way street. Your soul needs to prosper for your health, and your health needs to prosper so that your soul can prosper. Because there's lots of things that we can do in our diet and health that can benumb the mind and make it unable to comprehend the things of heaven. Romans 12:1 and 2 talks about us and reminds us that our bodies are a living sacrifice, and that it's our reasonable service to be preparing to present them that way. And we should not be conformed to this world, but transformed by the renewing of our mind. And that's only done through Christ Jesus, and that's God's will for us, his perfect will. And then just another note here for Ministry of Healing, that because our bodies are the temple of God and the habitation of the Holy Spirit, when we invite him in and allow him to do that, that we need to take care of that body temple and know how it works. So study and understand its needs and act our part, preserving it from harm and defilement. So today we're going to be talking about localized hot application of hydrotherapy. And we're just continuing on, and particularly in the use of the hot water bottle. So there's multiple uses of the hot water bottle. It's a soft rubber bag, has hot water in it. You can actually put cold in it too, so you could use it as an ice pack. So it's not strictly an ice or a hot pack. You can use it directly on or adjacent to the body part that has an issue with it. So it's nice because it has ability to pinpoint essentially a localized place of need for it. You'll notice that the blue bottle there has a sweater, and that's an important component for using hot water bottle. You need to have some kind of a cloth barrier between it and the skin. So whether that's clothing, or in this case a sweater or a flannel, it's a way to protect your skin from direct contact, because the water inside can be very hot, or depending on if you're using it in a cold pack situation, can be very cold. So some of the benefits, again, it's localized heat that's precisely applied. It's easy and useful for easing pain, for easing congestion, so kind of like a fomentation in a way. It helps to cause relaxation. So sometimes if someone's tense or has some pain, it can just help relax and allow sleep to come better. So it initiates rest. So that's prolonged use. Just some people take it to bed, right? And it can also be used to prolong and reinforce fomentation. So basically maintaining the temperature of the fomentation for a longer period of time between change outs. So it can make it more effective for a longer duration before the fomentation cools. So remember that the scales of temperature measurement, there's the centigrade scale and the Fahrenheit scale. Here in the United States, we're most familiar with the Fahrenheit scale, but we should also be familiar with what that is in centigrade. So the hot water bottle are the main supplies, the flannel towel or knit cover, and then water that's between 115 and 125 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's pretty piping hot water. And you want to have a thermometer to confirm that temperature. So you can look on our thermometer here, and that's up around 40, between 40 and 45 C. or a little bit higher than that, 43 to 47 C is 115 to 125 degrees Fahrenheit. Actually, 25 would be more like 50, 52 C. So just keep that in mind. So body temperature is 98.6 or 37 C. Room temperature is about 20, 22 C. So that's for about 70 degrees is considered room temperature. So just keep that in mind, depending on where you are and with what people you're working with, just as far as the temperature scale, measurement scale. So the procedure for applying the hot water bottle, you need to have boiling hot water. So there's a couple different ways you can do that. You can do that in one of these fancy electrical boiling pots, like a pitcher. Just plug it in, turn it on, it'll bring it up to piping hot. Or just boil it on the stove. So it can be stovetop or wood stove, whatever method you have for heating it. But the nice thing about the pitcher, the boiling it in the pitcher component, is it's a ready pour application. Instead of having to transfer it from the pot to a pitcher, because the neck of that hot water bottle is quite small. It has a little bit of a funnel, but it's just really helpful to have that pitcher as a pouring precision instrument to get it into the hole there. You don't ever want to fill that hot water bottle full. It should only be a third to a half full, because number one, the water is hot and it's going to be expanding inside there. And you don't want to have any chance for leaks because you don't want that water to be scalding any skin. So you want to lie the bottle on its side, so flat on the side, tip the mouth up and purge the air before closing it. So burp it, essentially. You want to get the air out of it. So the air is going to create a place for steam. It's going to also potentially increase the cooling. It's going to make it non-uniform in its heat. So you want to make sure you burp it. And that also allows the bottle to lie flat and not be bulged up where the air is present and rolling around in a bubble. Make sure you close it tightly and then check for leakage, because you don't want it to leak. Again, that's just really critical to have it not flow out onto the person that is being used upon. And then we talked about when we began the sweater or the flannel wrap. There's some pretty creative ways to do that. There's some knit ones, there's some flannel ones. You can even just wrap it in a towel. But the thing about a towel is it could slip out of that depending on how active or mobile or moving about the person is who it's being utilized on. So it could slip out. So having a sweater of sorts is a good idea. Some of them looks like have more of a constricted top. Others have more of a drawstring kind of attachment or sock-like elastic band, so they can slip into it because you want them to be able to be dried out and washed if needed to. So depending on how long you are doing your application, you want to be prepared to refresh the hot water throughout the application of the hot water bottle, because the hot water is the important benefit of the whole thing. So keeping it hot is important. At completion, you want to store the bag upside down so it's draining out, just so it doesn't so it dries out in the interior fashion. This one has a little hose at the bottom. You can use a hot water bottle as an enema bag too, and I think that's what that is there for. So there's multiple uses for a water bottle. That's what this essentially is. So it could be a cold application. We're talking about the hot application, but it can also be a lukewarm or enema kind of situation too. So the hot water bottle can be wrapped in a moist cloth and then a dry outer one. And essentially that's going to give it a mild fomentation effect in a localized area. So the heat from the bottle is going to keep that cloth, that moist cloth, hot and just act as that fomentation. And it can also be used, as we mentioned earlier, for prolonging fomentations, so they can get a longer period of time between rotations of the next set. So remember how many sets you typically, when you're doing a fomentation kind of an effect, you do a three rotation set in that, with an in between, you're doing a quick rub down with cold, basically quenching, driving the blood away. So you're using that most hydrotherapy purposes application procedures are actually pumping the blood to and from the area, increases the circulation, increases the movement of nutrients to and from, and the removal of toxins from the area of concern. So that's the role of the hydrotherapy. So again, it can prolong the period of time that a hot fomentation can stay hot before it needs to be changed out between. So it might be a good thing to have handy if you're doing a series of fomentations and have some supplies that you need to get. So you have a longer period in between change outs. It can buy you a little bit of time if you need to attend to another task. So some cautions when using the hot water bottle for hydrotherapy. Again, only partially fill it with water, 1/3 to 1/2. That gives room for expansion. Also make sure that you burp it. Test the temperature of the water. So you want to avoid it being overly hot, but here's the range. So 115 to 125 degrees is the range of temperatures best suited to the hot water bottle. The water temperature is really important. You want it to be hot, but not too hot. So especially in people who are unconscious and can't talk to you, someone who's dazed, or individuals who are maybe too weak to communicate, paralyzed or diabetic. Also because they just don't have the neurological sensation in the extremities or the areas that may be having the hot water bottle applied. So they have reduced temperature sensation ability, and that can be a recipe for burns. So that's important. Always test the bottle for leaks. You don't want it to pop the top and spill all over the individual. You want to make sure that you have a fabric insulation, again, because that rubber or plastic that holds the hot water can get piping hot too. I remember as a kid, my parents had a car with vinyl seats, and nothing like getting in a car with vinyl seats on a hot summer day. Just about cook your hide. So it's nice to have seats that have cloth seats, or have something that covers it, especially when it's hot like that, because there's heat transfer that takes place. So keep an eye on positioning. So restlessness can move it. So if you're doing or have applied it to an individual, just keep an eye on it, make sure it's actually in the place of need and can keep the heat there. Don't overweight the person, basically meaning that sometimes you can get a load on a person. So on their chest or on their back, you don't want to do that because that can decrease their ability to breathe, especially in a weak individual. So blankets or bottles, sometimes people can overdo it in that department. When you store your bottle, keep it free and away from anything that has a petroleum base or is oily in any way, because that can degrade the rubber of the bottle. And the best ones are rubber, as opposed to being plastics of some kind. I'm sure that they make those as well. And then don't double it over. Just keep it in the form in which it's molded, because that will tend to provide lines of crack as well. The next one we'll look at is the local hot, which is known also as a kidney stone pack, and that's probably its primary use. So it can be applied directly over the kidney area, especially when the pain from the stones is most severe. So here's a diagram from Mayo that shows the kidney stones. They form in the kidney. There are different things that are consumed that can lead to kidney stones. They start to cause pain when they cause blockages. They're heading down into the ureter, out of the major calyx or urine collection area of the kidney, and they will pass down through the ureters, and that passage point is painful, but then it lodges in the bladder, and the exit can also be painful. But the hot stone pack can help that. Interesting picture here of the different sizes of kidney stones and different shapes. They can be quite abrasive. It's basically crystals, uric acid crystals, oxalic acid crystals that have formed from using excessive amounts of those things in various foods that one would eat, and not having probably an alkaline acid base balance in the body. And the bottom picture basically is just to show you that they are beautiful too. So take them out and you can look at them under the microscope, and they have some amazing color and crystal depth to them. which is kind of interesting. So not a fun experience if you've ever had a kidney stone or any kind of a stone like that. The heat is a great thing that can help reduce the pain associated with it. So some of the benefits: it's placed over the kidney area when the pain is most acute, and it can be kept in place and continually refreshed until the pain goes away or it passes. So that can be a while. I mean, it takes down grown men and grown women. I mean, it can just wipe you out. The pain that can be very acute. So it's nice to have a tool that you can use to just kind of help you pass through that. Supplies. One helpful thing is having a heating pad of various types here. We'll talk about their application. A plastic garbage bag, a hot fomentation pack, towels, sheet, blankets, a cold compress, and a radio. And it's not for your listening pleasure. So application. So spread the half sheet over the middle of the bed. So this is going to be an application where the person will be lying. The pack will be under the person on the bed in the back of the torso, down in the lower back area where the kidneys are. You want to place the heating pad set to high range right on the sheet, and then cover it with a plastic bag or a square piece of plastic. So that's going to protect the heating pad from potentially getting moist or damp during the course of its application. So place the hot pack or the fomentation on top of the plastic. So this is a fomentation that is a towel pack, like we've demonstrated or talked about prior to this episode here tonight. So you place it on top of the plastic and then cover it with the towel. And that towel is going to insulate it and protect your skin when the individual lays down upon it. So then immediately lie down on it while it's hot, and the heating pad underneath it will help prolong the heat in much the same way that we saw the hot water bottle do that. And that might actually be a good way to do that in the absence of electricity. So we were just talking about how heating pads are helpful, but they may not always be available. Power outages or a lack of power of some sort, or in a place where there is no power. So a hot water bottle can be put together over a stove, over a fire for heating purposes. So there's multiple ways that could be applied. So position over the person's kidney region, the person's kidney region over the pack. So they're lying on their back. Bring the sheet up around the body and pin in place. So it snugs the fomentation around the torso, kind of wraps it around. And then plug the radio into the same outlet as the heating pad. And basically this is just a safety mechanism. If you're using a hot water bottle, the radio aspect of this is a moot point. The nice thing about a heating pad is the temperature is constant. It's not going to decrease over time. But you're going to tune the radio to a channel that has no reception and then turn the volume high. So if for some reason there's a leakage, it gets down onto the heating pad area and the element, and there's a short of some kind, it'll cause a lot of static and alert you to the danger before any other potential problems with the wet electrical system could come your way. So it's just a way to alarm you. And that's the role of the radio. So keep the head cool with a cold compress, because the body will tend to have a warming trend to it or activity. And you want to always just make sure that the head area isn't warmed excessively, because when temperature increases, proteins start to unfold and what we call denature. And if the head is allowed to get too warm, there can be potential damage to the proteins and the neurological tissue in the brain. And that's some of the most fragile tissue in our body that has the longest regeneration time. So you want to protect the head by keeping it cool. Same thing with a hot foot bath. Keep that cold compress to the head. Any kind of a fomentation where the body is heating up, you want to keep a cold compress to the head, and a sponge bath of the head to keep it cool as compared to the rest of the body. So at the end of the application of the kidney stone pack, if the pain has gone away, it's shifted or something like that, and it no longer is causing pain, or that the stone has gone through and you eliminated it, keep the person covered and warm. You don't want to have drafts again, because again, they've warmed their body temperature up. They've been resting, but you don't want them in a drafty situation. And then allow them to have post application rest. It'll probably be a sweet relief because it can be quite painful. So here's just a diagram of where the kidneys lie in the body, kind of towards the back, lower back, and there's one on each side, unless you've had one removed or only have one. Some people do only have one. There are some foods that can be helpful in helping to relieve kidney stone symptoms. Pomegranate juice, kidney beans, basil leaves, wheatgrass juice, nettle leaf tea, watermelon, lemon juice, dandelion root, uva ursi. So that's another term for kinnikinnick. We know that natively as kinnikinnick. Horsetail and organic celery. So this is from a place called livealittle.longer.com. You might want to investigate the particular ones they've noted here. But there's a nice mix of wild things here, the horsetail, the dandelion, the nettle leaf tea, things you can grow yourself, other than probably in here lemon juice and pomegranate juice, but you can do your own wheatgrass juice. The kinnikinnick or uva ursi is also something that is native here. I just took a couple clippings today from a friend's yard and have that started again to see if we can get some of our own plants here. And then basil leaves. So those are two different applications of localized hot. We have the hot kidney stone pack and the hot water bottle application. To review this, you can go to www.preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com, where you can look at previous episodes and ones upcoming.